Hello everyone, in this video we are going to look at how to make a connection between a passenger and a driver inside of the taxi app, and how we can pass this route or the passenger location to the driver and he can see a route going to the passenger. Now obviously it's not going to be something that you can put straight into production, because we're just going to make a really simple backend in Socket.io that's basically only going to be meant for one driver, one passenger. But the point is to get to a state really fast where we can have a test of how the flow is going to be from the passenger to the driver. And then from then on, we are going to scale it up and try to see how we can do it for multiple passengers and multiple drivers and so on. So the point is to get to the meat and potatoes of this concept of a taxi app as fast as possible. Once you have the project up and running, make sure that you have a API key inside of a Google API key file inside of the mobile folder. You can see an example here where the file has an API key defined in a string, and I do a module.exports of the API key. Then I can import the API key and use it anywhere inside of my app. So make sure you have an API key that you created in the other videos and you paste it inside here and create a file like this. First thing we need to do is to create a screen where we can select whether we are a passenger or a driver. So we're going to make another folder in here, we call it screens. And in here we're going to copy the app file inside, paste it in. Then I'm going to call this class in the app file here for passenger instead. And I'm going to rename this file to passenger. Now let's do the same for the driver. So we copy the passenger file and paste it in the screens. And this one we call driver. And inside this file we also make sure that the class is called driver. Once that is done, we need to make some changes to our app.js file. So I'm going to minimize this here. And then we are going to make it really simple. So let's just take this constructor with the state here. Remove that. Remove this. We also remove the function getRouteDirections on change destination. We clean up the render function as well. We need it much more simple. Also this one. The styles as well. So we also remove all of this. And then we import a button instead. So we're pretty much left with this. We can just export a view maybe. So in the end, the app.js file is going to end up being super simple like this. Well, not in the end, but for now. You can see we stripped out everything from the previous passenger file we had before. And we're just going to have two buttons in here for selecting if you're a driver or a passenger. So let's make a state in here that says is driver. We set it to false by the start. And is passenger. We also set to be false by the start. And then we're going to import the driver and the passenger screen from the files we made before. So we import driver from screens driver. And then we import passenger from screens passenger. And now it says unable to resolve module Google API key because we went up and folder in here with the screens. So we need to go up a folder. Then we can get to the API key. The same inside of the passenger file. Because my Google API key is at the mobile folder and we just moved into a screen down. And I will just call this passenger instead. Now, let's see, we need to have two buttons. A view with two buttons. So we also have a container for the view. So we say styles and put in the style of container. Just make it a flex container. Like that. And then inside this view here, we will have two buttons. So button. We'll call title passenger. So you click that if you want to go to the passenger app. And we have the driver if you want to go to the driver app. Let's see. Okay, so it needs an onPress function inside of the button, but we can work with this so far. Now let's put a margin top of 50 just so we move it down a little bit. That's odd that it doesn't. Oh, that's because I need to make this container property inside the style sheet. So it's still not going. Let's see why it's not taking it. The mistake I was doing was that I had an S at the style here. So remove the S, so it's style, and then it should be working. Yeah. So now there's a little margin on top, and we need to have something that happens when you press the button. So on press, we say arrow function, we say this set state. And we say is a passenger, we set to true. And we just copy that and use the same thing for the driver, except we say, of course, that it's going to be is driver true. And there we go. So let's see. Now nothing happens when we press the buttons. But if we say down here, we say if this state is driver. So if we are a driver, we return a driver component. And if we are passenger, we say return passenger component. So now if you click one of the buttons, it's going to set the state to driver or passenger. And if there's a state of driver or passenger, we're going to return a component of the passenger or driver screen. And you won't see this instead. Okay. Now I want to make it so that when we select the passenger view and we enter in a destination, then now I want a little button down here below where you can say request a driver. So let's see how we can do that. So I'm going to make a view down here in the passenger file at the bottom of the render function. And let's try and just have some text in here. So you can see it ends up being up here. Now there's a little trick to get it down to the bottom. So let's make a style here. Styles. I'll call it bottom button. So in the style sheet, bottom button. And then, oops, let's make it a background color of black. I misspelled the style here, so bottom. Now it's black, and also want some style on this text here. So styles, bottom text. And we say color is white. Let's see. Wonder why it's not showing right now. Let's try and make a font size of 20. Looks like my bundler has given up. So I will just run it again. Okay, so now it's updated with the text here. It says find driver with the bigger text. And well, we still haven't moved the bottom down to the bottom. But the way to do that is to enter in margin top and auto. So that moves it down to the bottom here. Now let's put in a margin of 20. Yeah. And then put a padding of 15. Let's put a padding left 30. Padding right of 30. And then let's say align self, so the text gets centered, or the bottom itself. And there we go. So now there's a find driver bottom in the bottom. Now what we need now is to have some sort of call to the Socket.io backend once we press this button with the driver's destination or the driver location to, the passenger location to the driver. So let's make it into a touchable, you can say touchable opacity. Make sure you have touchable opacity imported up here. And now the styling just went away. So let's make sure to copy or cut the style from the view onto the touchable opacity. And now you can see you can click the button. So I just moved the style up to the touchable opacity and have the view inside here. Now the next step is that we only show this find driver button if we have a destination inside that we have selected here. So I only want to show the find driver button once I am at this state where we show a destination. So let's see how we can do that. Let's define a driver button up here to be null by default. And then we go and say if there's a point cards array that has a length over 1, which is the array we use to draw the route in the map, we are going to show the button. So inside the same if, we say driver button is equal to the button we created down here below. So I'm going to cut this and paste it in here. So now it will only show if there is an array on the array route inside of the map. Of course, we also need to have the driver button down here. So we write driver button. And now it's only showing the button if there is a route. So let's go and decide the passenger. There's no button now. But if I type in a destination and select it, it's going to show the button. Next step, we are going to make it so that when we press the button, it's going to connect to our backend Socket.io server and send the driver request. Now inside of this little Socket.io chat app that we made in another video, there are some remnants from the backend in here inside of the backend folder on the index.js file. Now we need to have this backend running while we try and do this. So go ahead and write, let's go ahead. I will make a new terminal window and go inside of the backend folder. And then I will run node1 index.js. So now the server, the Socket.io server, is running on port 3000. And so far there's only events for a chat message, but we are going to make one for taxi request as well. First, let's try and see if it can make an event for when you're pressing the button. We need to connect to a Socket.io server. So inside this touchable opacity button, inside of the driver button, let's make an onPress function. And here we will call this request driver. And now let's make a function that's called async request driver. And here we make a Socket.io connection. Let's see if I already have Socket.io. I do not have Socket.io. So we say import Socket.io from, let's see, Socket.io-client. So if you don't have this package installed already from a previous video we did with the chat client, make sure you have this packet installed. Now, let's go in the request driver function. And in here we say socket is equal to socket.io, and we say connect. Let me see if I have a big S. I will just make that a small s instead. So we say socket.io connect, and we pass in the IP of our local IP where the server is running. So that's going, for my case, going to be 0273000. And let's see, my debugger just gave up a little here. That's okay. I will just run it again. And now we'll go and say socket on connect. So this is the event that happens when we have connected. Let's see here what's going on with my packager. It's really acting weird now, but it seems to be running now. Now, when we have the connect event, so this is on the connect event inside of Socket.io. We will say, I will just do a console log of client connected here. And then we can request a taxi. Yeah, that's my arrow function. That is odd. Sorry about that. I needed a comma instead of a equal sign. My mistake. So let's see. We need to get some point where the server is saying that a user connected, which happens when we have a connection. And we are supposed to do a connection when we get the request driver function called. So let's do and see if we can do that. So when I press this button, I want to call the request driver, which we call down here on the onPress. So let's see if it works. And we see a user connected inside of the backend. Now I also get some yellow box error message or warning, I would rather call it. In here, we're going to just kind of ignore this message. I will show you how to do that because it doesn't really matter. This message here on recognize WebSocket connection options, you can go ahead and either Google it. And if you Google it, I will show you. So if you Google this on recognize WebSocket connection options, take the first result here. There's a good answer here that you can copy this. Basically, this is something to do with Socket.io and, well, specifying transfer layer and so on inside of React Native. It doesn't really matter. You can ignore this warning, setting it up inside of your app. So let's go ahead. I copied the answer. I'm going to paste it inside of the video resources and so on also, but you can just Google it also. I'm going to copy that inside of the index.js file. So I copy this or paste it inside. And now the annoying yellow error is gone. Okay, so in the next section, we are going to actually request a taxi or make an event that is requesting a taxi. And we are going to listen for this event inside of our backend. Next thing is we are going to submit this event to the Socket.io server. We're going to submit the passenger location to the driver so the driver can see how far away is the passenger to get to them. And that is super easy also. So we say socket emit. We call it a taxi request. And then we can pass in some JSON or, well, object we have. So we can pass in the state of the route response. And so we're going to take the route response that we have from the Google API, because the route response is having a two place IDs inside of it. It has the place ID for the passenger, the start of the destination, and the end of the destination. And we can use that inside of the driver to display how to get to a passenger's location. So let's go ahead and say a route response and set that to the JSON that we get from the get route directions from the Google API. Now, let's see. So we send the route response to the Socket.io server with the taxi request event. Now let's see if we can get this message, in fact. So let's remove this. Actually, let's just change it. This socket on chat message event to be a taxi request event instead. And now here where we have message, let's change that to route response instead. And then let's do a console log of the route response. So we can see if we are actually getting data from our client. So if I press find driver now, it shows null. So let's try and reload it, probably because the route response state is not being set. But if I reload the app, it's going to set it, hopefully. So we Google for set a destination, and we click on find driver, and we can see lots of nice data we get here. So here we can see inside of the property geocoded waypoints, this is an array containing 2 waypoints. The first one is where we start, which has a place ID, and the second one is where we end up, or the destination here. And we're going to use the first one inside of the driver screen to calculate the route to our passenger, to see how far away is the passenger, if the taxi wants to take the request, if they're too far away or if they're close enough. So now what's left to do now in the next section is to do the driver side of things, so that we can click on a button inside of the driver screen and look for passengers. So inside of the driver screen, we can see here we still have the destination. If we go in and reload the app, click on driver, we can see we still have the destination input box. We don't want that on the driver screen because we just want to sit and wait for passengers. So let's remove the text input here and the predictions. And then let's remove the predictions here. And also want to remove the onChange destination that is used for the destination input box. And let's keep this to get route directions so far, because we might use it for showing the route to the passenger. And then also let's change this route on destination debounced in the constructor. And that should be it for now. So now let's reload the app. Let's see if the driver screen is still working. Looks like it's still working. It is just a pure map right now, but we are going to have a little button down below, just like in our passenger. So let's go into the passenger screen and let's just copy the driver button that we used from the other section. Now you would probably make this into a component, like a distinct component for a button in the bottom, but for now I'm just going to copy it and we will see if we can consolidate it later on. So let me see. So we copy that button into the driver map, into the driver screen, just like that. And instead of saying request driver, we say look for passengers. And I am going to make a little function here. Look for passengers. It's just going to be empty for now. And it says touchable opacity is not found. So we import touchable opacity up here in the driver screen. Now let's see. We also want the styles for the button. So go ahead and go down to the styles in the passenger screen. Let's copy the two bottom, and text, and for the button itself, the two styles, paste them in here in the driver app or the driver screen. I keep saying driver app, but it is the driver screen. And let's see how it looks. So it says find driver right now, but of course we need to say find passenger instead. So, and now when you click this one, nothing happens because the look for passengers function is really empty. So let's fill out the look for passenger option or the function. So when we click on the find passenger, let's just show a activity indicator. So a spinning round circle. Let's see, let's say this set state. Let's say looking for passengers, set that to true. So we can use that to set an activity indicator once we press the button. And by default, when we just start up, let's set it to false. And so once we click, it becomes true. And then let's see. We set a activity indicator down here under the text, I think. Let's import the activity indicator up from React Native. And let's pass it in here. And if we say animating depends on the state of looking for passengers. So if it's true, we'll display it. Just like that. Let's see if there's a size. Let's make that a large. Okay. So once you click on the button, it's going to show a spinning activity indicator just to show that there's actually something in progress. Now, if you don't like that there's this large blank space when you haven't pressed the button, you can do a little trick here where I'm just gonna cut this into my clipboard, cut it, Control X. And then I will say this state, looking for passengers, if that equals true, then we will return the activity indicator. But if it's not true, we'll return null. So now we don't get the large blank space underneath. And once we press the button, it's going to show the activity indicator. Now we need to actually connect to the Socket.io server once we press the look for passenger button. So let's go ahead and try to do that. First, import Socket.io from Socket.io-client, just like we did inside of the passenger screen. Now inside here, let's say const socket.io connect, and it's the same IP as inside of these of the passenger screen. So in my case, it is this address. And then we'll just wait, see how it looks. So if you go and say find passenger, it should say a user connected down here. Unfortunately, it didn't. Oh, it's 27 for me. It's not 28. Sorry. 27. And there we go. It says a user connected. And now we need to send an event of, well, looking for passenger. So let's go and say socket on connect. So this is when the socket has connected. We will do something. We will say socket emit looking for passenger. And we're not going to send anything. We'll just do this like it is. And then we're going to listen for this event inside of the backend. So we'll say socket on looking for passenger. Then we're also going to do something inside of the backend here. And we can just do a console log right now and say someone is looking for a passenger. Maybe do a console log of the socket. Actually, I will just wait with that. I'll just do a console log of someone is looking for a passenger. So driver, someone is looking for a passenger. Then what we're going to do is we're going to save this socket that is making this request. And then inside of the passenger socket that is making the taxi request, we're going to send a message to this socket. Okay, so let's try and do that. So let's save the taxi socket, we'll call it that. I'll set it to be null up here. And here in looking for passenger, we're going to define the taxi socket to be the socket that just sent us the request. And now inside of the taxi request, we are going to say, well, if the taxi socket is not null, then we're going to emit on the taxi socket. We're going to send something on the taxi socket. We will send a taxi request again. And we're going to emit the route response, which is going to be the Google API response for the route for the passenger's destination, the route they want to go to. Now, obviously, we need to do something. We need to have two clients running. So we need to run another simulator, or you can run it on your physical phone as well. But I'm going to run it on another simulator. So I'm going to go ahead and go inside mobile and run React Native, run iOS. I'm going to run this on the iPhone 5. But you can also run it on the Android simulator. Now I have both of the simulators running. I have the iPhone 5 simulator here. Again, if you want to run it on Android, you're free to do that, or on a physical phone. You just need to have two devices running. So let's go inside of the driver and we'll say we want to find a passenger. So someone is looking for a passenger. And the socket is now being saved here since we made a passenger request. Now let's look inside of the passenger app on the iPhone 5. So we type in the destination and we say find driver. And now it's saying a user connected, but it should also be making a taxi request and emitting this taxi request to our driver app. So let's just do a console log just to be sure. Someone is looking for a taxi. I'm just gonna reload both. And inside of the driver, let's do where we wait for the event, just like in the backend. So we say socket on taxi request. We say we get some data here. This is the route response. And we say, well, we can just do a console log for now to see if we get the data. And then I'm going to say this one has JS debugging enabled. This is the driver. So I'm going to look inside of the browser to see if I get some data. And I will have the browser here. Okay, so Lots of windows going on inside of one screen, but I just try to show you what is going on here. So let's see. We go inside of the driver app, click on driver, click on find passenger. Someone is looking for a passenger. Then we go inside of the passenger app, click on our destination, say find driver. Someone is looking for a taxi. Let's see if we got some data, and we did. So inside of the driver screen, we now have this console log of 2 geocoded waypoints. And these waypoints that we got from the Google API response from our passenger app, which is making the routes here, the 2 waypoints we see here inside geocoded waypoints, the first one is the start destination, which is the passenger's location. The second one is the end destination. Now, as the driver, we are interested in getting the start destination or the passenger location, so the driver can see how far away is our passenger. Do we want to take this ride or not? And we're going to use this place ID and paste it inside of the Google route endpoint, and we will get a route to the passenger, just like we have from the passenger to the destination. So yeah, a lot of explaining going on here, but it's actually pretty simple to do this. Let's see. So we will use the same function that we had inside of the passenger app for drawing or getting the directions. We paste in a place ID, but we're just going to use the passenger's location as the place ID instead. So that's the geocoded waypoints, the first item in the array, and the place ID. So let's go ahead and try to do that. So once we get a taxi request, we get this route response. And first I will remove this keyboard dismiss, because we don't have a keyboard up in the driver app when we're looking for passengers or something like that. So I'm going to remove that. And let's see. So I also want to remove the destination name, because we're not going to use that, at least not for now. So I'll also remove destination up here in the state constructor. And the predictions array as well. We're not using that in the driver screen. And yeah, so we call, when there's a taxi request, we call get route directions with the route response. And this is where we have the geocoded waypoints we sent. Geocoded waypoints. We take the first item in the array, and we take the place ID. So now we have a destination place ID, which is actually the passenger's location. And now we can show that inside of the driver screen instead. So let's see people, how it's going to look. So once we get the taxi request from the passenger, it should show up some destination or route to get to the passenger. Let's see if my guess about that is correct. So go into driver and we say find passenger. Finding passenger. Someone is looking for a passenger. And inside of the passenger app, we go find the driver. And voila. Well, we get a route to get to the passenger, which is actually exactly the same spot that we're on already. So Google is making sort of a funny loop around here. Let's see if I can set the location to be a little different. Let's see the debug location. I wonder if this location is going to be for all of the simulators or only for this one. Let's change this one to 74. Where did I go now? Yeah, okay, I went down there. Now let's see if it changes that for the passenger app as well. No, it didn't. It's only for this one, it looks like. That is good. I will just check. And now I went inside of the passenger app. So it looks like it is only for this simulator, which is great. That's what I want. So now let's try the scenario again. I go into the driver and I select find passenger. We go in the passenger app, Facebook, and find driver. And now it is showing us the route to get to a passenger. Now, obviously, it should show that, hey, passenger is found. Would you like to accept it? So let's go ahead and change that. But other than that, it is working as I intended it should do. It's showing the route up to the passenger where we are. We are right here. So let's go ahead and change it so that it shows passenger found instead of keeping the activity indicator. So let's see, when we get a passenger, I want to change the looking for passengers to be false. And I also want to change let's make the bottom text into a state instead. So I'll just call it bottom text. I'll say passenger found. And by default inside here, we're going to make it into find passenger. So let's see. We'll do inside the text of the bottom here in the driver, find passenger. We're going to make it into this state bottom text. So let's go ahead. So now it says passenger found. I kinda don't know why it is showing me the activity indicator, because it's supposed to only show if I have looking for passengers set to true, because that's because I made it into look for passengers. I'm supposed to say to looking for passengers. It's small things like that gets you. And yeah, well, it should be working now. I'm just going to do it again. So passenger found. And now obviously it should show you some sort of prompt for if you want to accept the ride or not. And next step is, of course, that the passenger gets a notification that a driver has accepted your ride. He's on the way. Maybe the passenger can see it on the map in real time as the driver is driving up to the passenger. But that's what we're going to do in the next sections.